All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Torah on Tap. We are, thank you very much. Thank you. You missed the festivities, shame on you. We are, the people that matter the most are here tonight celebrating with me, this is true. But more important, they're here not just to celebrate, but they're here to learn. Tonight, we are moving forward with fire. Flames of leadership, balancing strength and humility. We spoke about the last three elements, water, air, and earth. And tonight we are doing fire. And if you see the pattern of, if you hear the sounds of water dripping in the background, it's because it's raining outside. We are sitting in the sukkah, at the makeshift sukkah of the Safra Synagogue, the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue in Manhattan. And it is raining. Tonight is, by the way, I'm not sure if you know this, but tonight is the first night it's rained in 16 days. It has not rained in 16 days, and you're probably wondering why I know that. 16 days ago, at 1:30 a.m., my daughter calls me. She's like, "Abba, there's a geyser outside our house." I'm like, what do you mean? One of the sprinklers broke, and there's like water shooting up like 30 to 40 feet in the air. So I'm like, it's September already. Like, I could turn the sprinklers off. It's gonna rain. It's supposed to rain. So of course I turn off the sprinklers, and my grass is dead because it hasn't rained in like 16 days. So I've been praying every day. I'm like, I don't want to say Morid Time, I want to say Mashi Baruach. I want it to happen, and finally after 16 days, my dreams came true. Anyway, okay, it's on my birthday. See, all right, birthday wishes do come true. Okay, so fire, flames of leadership. If you've noticed, in our conversations about the elements, we spoke about how each element to any extreme is bad. And this is true with all midot. And at the core of what we're really looking to accomplish is something called balance, or AKA tiferet, which is an expression of balance, harmony. So you have fire. Fire is expressed itself on a spiritual level from the will. Okay, the obstacles of fire is inflated ego and anger. So if you see people that are like very egotistical and maybe narcissistic, or they get very heated, they're very angry, that's because they are a fire sign. How do you alleviate it? You have to work on humility. We've spoken about humility in this group several times over the years. The idea of being someone who is not someone who is humiliated, but someone who is humble. Someone who is humble is someone who understands when to be big and when to be small. And that's really the core of everything that fire is trying to get you to do. We know that Moses was Ish Anav Mikol Adam Al Pnei Aretz. He was the most humble man that walked on the planet. And we struggle with that. We should all struggle with that, because how is he the most humble man on the planet? If you were to go ahead and draw an image or write a character in a book and describe what the most humble man in the world looks like, what traits would you give him? Would you give him someone who could stand up to a king? Would you give him the ability of being a warrior to stand up to giants and fight in major wars? Are those the traits that you would associate with someone who's humble? And therefore, what Moses represents is someone whose humility is in balance. He was a fire sign, okay? And he is someone who is his mazal is Aries, because we know when he was born. He's a Nisan baby. And he is someone who is always finding that ability of balancing out these two things. And maybe that's why the thing that he sees is what's the one experience that he has that changes his life forever? It has to do with fire, the burning bush, right? An extreme, okay? But anyway, so let's look at this pasuk in Ovadja. Okay, this is interesting. This is personified by Yosef, Yehuda, and Melech David. We didn't even get to Moshe over here. Avadja says, "V'haya bet Yaakov esh u'bet Yosef lahava." The house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. And this is already an idea that Navi is teaching us, that there is something profound about this particular midah. You see, Yaakov, by the way, his midah was what? Tiferet. Okay, and Yosef, what was he known for? What's his midah? What does that mean? Sod. What? Foundations. Okay, now foundations are also an expression of balance. Okay, if your foundation is unbalanced, what happens to the house? Topples over. Look at the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Okay, it's still leaning, it's not straight. It lacks tiferet. Jim Collins, who's a famous author who wrote a book called Good to Great, which all of you should have read at some point. It's a very important book. It's still relevant for us today. And he talks about how he interviewed 30 major companies, Fortune 500 companies that were okay companies. When they changed the CEO, the CEOs moved the company from good companies to great companies. Forgot the number of millions and millions of dollars. And he found a formula that all companies that move from good to great have one thing in common. They have amazing leaders. And the one trait that he says is the most important trait when you're looking for in leadership is humility. If the CEO does not have humility, and this is what he says, is a great leader is a study in duality, modest and willful, humble and fearless. That balance of being both. This is Moshe. He did a scientific study that says that if you found a CEO who's talking about his company, and for most of the time he's talking about all the things he has done for the company himself, okay, there are people that will use the psychology of this book and say they'll short the company. If the new CEO comes on and he talks about his own accomplishments, you just short the stock. You short the company, you'll always, like 98% of the time, you're going to make a crazy amount of money. To the point where they know this already, and they already have other people writing their drafts for them, so you can't really trust the prospectuses anymore and the new CEOs. Okay, fine. So we know that Yosef is part of this. It says, "V'yan Yosef et Paro le'mor b'l'adai Elokim ya'anet shalom Paro." One of Yosef's traits is the humility. It's not me. It's Borei Olam. It's God. Why is the belief in God such an important ingredient to one's humility? Did you ever think about that? Ever wonder why? Why is there a correlation between someone's true depth, the belief in God, and their humility? Yeah.
Then you acknowledge that you can't do anything just by yourself.
Yeah, you can't do it because that means there is something that has guided you, has provided for you, has set you up, right? It's not only you, and there's some other force that's giving you everything. And we mentioned this here before. You know, I remember this interview many years ago of this Jewish singer. His name is Billy Joel, and he's it wasn't that funny now. I'm just joking around. It was, but anyway. So they asked him, like, you came up with all these amazing hits, all these songs. Like, what did you do? Like, where does that inspiration come from? And he's like, honestly, I don't really know. He's like, I know that it doesn't come from me. It comes from someplace else. And that all I'm doing is tapping into this other thing, this other source where this music is coming from, and I'm just able to express it. And then Nevi'im speak about this also, that there is a level of consciousness that happens beyond consciousness. And if you're aware of it, then you understand there's something that is guiding you. Like, why did that particular thought pop into your head? Where did that come from? Is it you, or is it some other thing that is guiding you? Why are you drawn to those things? Where are those things coming from? So a person who has humility understands that everything that he has is not from him. I'm not the best, a curator of stocks. I'm not the best investor. I honestly, financially, I have no idea how I've survived as long as I have. I just know that everything that I have is from God. If you would have asked me 26 years ago, my anniversary is coming up, by the way. I got married on September 27th. My 26th anniversary is coming up, and which is crazy. If you'd have asked me 26 years ago, do you see yourself having 6 children and being the rabbi of the Safra Synagogue in Manhattan, I would have said, nah, you're crazy, not me. Absolutely not. I have no idea how I would do any of that. There's no way I could support 6 children. I'm never going to have that many kids. It's not going to happen. And yet here we are. And I'll tell you that it had nothing to do with me. I was just playing my part and smiling and being appreciative that Borei Olam gave me the things that I had, right? And I rolled with it. I trusted. I'm not saying you don't do your shtadlut. I'm not saying you don't put in your effort. You do the best you can. But ultimately, you have to sometimes let go and let God. Okay? Yosef is that. He says it over here. Yosef's greatness. He says to Paro, you think that I'm the one interpreting your dreams? It's not me. It's Borei Olam. I'm nothing. I'm just a vessel. I am just the waiter. Every class that I teach is not my material. There's nothing here that's mine. Everything that is here is sourced by somebody else. It's somebody else saying it. All I'm doing is I'm taking the ingredients in the Jewish refrigerator of ingredients, and I'm throwing it onto a sheet, and I'm presenting it to you this way. Someone else can do exactly the same thing. Nothing here is mine. Everything here comes from something or someone else. Okay? Sorry. Anyway, so let's look at Rav Dessler, Michtav Eliyahu, number 5. And he says, to develop humility and fearlessness, one must build self-esteem by internalizing 3 mindsets. These are the 3 mindsets for building self-esteem and humility and fearlessness and so on and so forth. Okay? Number 1, self-worth. Am I worth something because I am a spark of God? Number 2, Self-acceptance. I accept myself, including my strengths and my weaknesses, as a gift from God. Self-confidence. I can succeed and overcome obstacles because I am created in the image of whom? Borei Olam, God. Why are these three principles the foundational principles for developing humility and fearlessness?
It's recognizing that it's not from himself.
It's not for me. And therefore, everything that I have, all my challenges, all my problems, all my difficulties, all my hang-ups, all my mishigas, as they say, my craziness, that is from God.
And my successes.
I'm saying, of course your successes. I'm saying even the negative stuff, like forget about the successes. That's easy to like, but I want to say even the things that are challenging for us are part of God's plan. You think it's just you and that you might be flawed, but you're not flawed. You're perfect. You're perfectly flawed. And what I mean is that your imperfections are godly. Your imperfections are what are the perfect counterweight that allow you to become the most perfect you. And therefore, there's no room for haughtiness. One person is born with an amazing set of DNA, and they're beautiful on the inside and the outside. They're intelligent. They're have everything going for them. You know, the people that are over 6'2" generally make more money than people that are less than 6'2". Who knew? Okay, but I didn't win that lottery set, and I have what I have, right? And I accept what I have. This is what I am. My family, my parents, my community, wherever I grew up, is exactly what I needed to become the best me. Now, what gets in the way? I get in the way because I think I'm 100% in control. You're not in control of the circumstance. You're in control of the response to the circumstance. The fire sign is a part of us where the ego inflates and takes over. It fills that hot air balloon, and it keeps blowing and blowing and blowing because it's all me, 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 me. It's not fair. Zelo fair, Rabbi. Why did I get these parents? Why did I have these challenges? Why is this my DNA? And so on and so forth. You know? And we struggle with those things. But in reality, those things are all a blessing. In the same way that all the good things that you have is from Hashem, and therefore there's no haughtiness there. I'm saying the same way that the good things are there, the negative things, the challenge that we have is also from Hashem, and it's good. There's no bad. There's just your perception of evil in the world. There is no evil in the world. Everything that is happening, and as difficult as for me to say this, even the war in Israel, everything that has ever happened somehow is pointing to some greater good. I am not going to lie to you and tell you that I'm going to pretend to understand it because I don't understand it. Do I struggle with it? Yes. But I do believe at some point we're all going to be there, and that one day, hopefully soon, we're going to say, Bayom huhu yeh echad ushmo echad. We're going to point that one day, say, Borei Olam, there he is, he's the man, there's no more uncertainty, there's no more doubt, there's no more disbelief, 100%, five-finger clear clarity, clear knowledge. It's like, you know you have 5 fingers, you know there's a God, it'll be that clear to you. At that same moment, in the same way, Va'ani Yosef, when Yosef said to the brothers, here I am, okay, it all made sense to them, it's going to make sense to us as well. All you have to do is hang on. Play your part. How do you play your part? Okay, well, I play my part by having a pleasant predisposition, never giving up, always being positive, embracing the circumstance that I'm in, and trying every single day to be a little bit better. That's all I got to do. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. I'm going to make lots of mistakes moving forward, but God is not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be the best you in the circumstance that you find yourselves in. Okay, on the third day, Yosef said to them, do this and you shall live, for I have all of God. He is constantly talking about this idea that like, Yirat Hashem. We say Yirat Hashem, Reshit Chochma, Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. Why is that? Why is the fear of heaven the beginning of all wisdom? What does the fear of heaven really equal? Humility. How many professors today who have their degrees, their PhDs, okay, who sit there all day in their ivory towers telling people what truth is. They don't. A professor should not have the ego that allows them to feel the confidence in defining truth. The only thing a professor should have is the knowledge that the more you know is the more you know not. That the paradox of knowledge is that I don't know everything. And that a real wise person just says, you know what, I don't really know, I'm not sure, but these are the different ways I could present this information to you, and hopefully you'll find your own truth. That's emet, that's what we call critical thinking. The rabbi, he never gets his PhD. I can never get my PhD if I want to in Judaics, right? At the best I could ever be is a Talmid Chacham. I hope to be one day a Talmid Chacham. What is a Talmid Chacham? A student of knowledge, a student of wisdom, a student of Chokhmah, a student of Koachmah, asking questions. That's what I want to be. I'm striving to be a person that's trying to be a Talmid Chacham. I want to ask questions. That's what we want. There's no PhD. There's no I've arrived, I've finished, I've completed. Yosef is that example. The viceroy, the most powerful man in Egypt, is always reminding people it's not me, it's Borei Olam, because he has Yirat Hashem. Midrash says, our sages taught that Joseph had awe of God both when he was a slave and when he was a ruler. It never left him. Barbara Fredrickson, in her book, The Positivity Book, 2009, quote, awe is happening when you come across goodness on a grand scale, making you feel small and humble, yet part of something larger. Right? That is a awe. Yirah is that level of awe. Yirah is often translated as fear. Right? We call it Yamim Neraim, right? The days of awe, right? The days of awesomeness. But Yirah is really is different. You know, it was like about 8 years ago, I brought a group of guys to a particular yeshiva in Israel, and there was like 25 guys in this class. They're all beginners, and I don't always make it to these classes with the boys because I'm organizing other parts of these trips. And there was a rabbi in the room, and he was, and I happened to be there, and I overhear him talking about how, you guys have to learn to fear God the same way you would fear your father who's pulling out his belt. I'm like, what? That doesn't sound normal. Like, that's not the kind of God I don't want to, that's not the image I have of my God. Like, I don't know what your father did to you as a kid, but certainly, that's not the image of God I had. So he kept going like that. Yira is fear. And so now I'm like, what? So I raised my hand because I looked like a madrich more than a rabbi at the time. And I said, listen, Rabbi, I quoted other Pesukim, and I said, listen, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And I explained why Yira is awe. And I gave examples. I remember the examples that I gave at the time. And he fought me on it. And we literally went on for like a half hour going back and forth, quoting different things, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at the end, we were both right. There is an element of this idea of fear, but that's not the element of, that's not the relation that you and I want with Hashem. It does exist, and it's actually a machloket, how we understand yirah. So to be, honest, there is this other opinion. It's not one that I subscribe to. I'm going to go with the Beit Hillel approach. I'm not the Beit Shammai guy. I worked for Hillel many years ago, so I go with the Beit Hillel approach. All right. So anyway, the Gemara says as follows: Talmud Brachot 33b says our sages emphasize that the next world, true treasure is not material wealth, but awe of God. The Holy One, blessed be He, has nothing in His treasury other than the treasure of awe of Hashem, of heaven. What does that mean? What is the Gemara saying? It means the more and more you can trust HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more and more you can create Yirat Hashemayim, the more and more you can build yourself in that way, right? The more grounded you will be, and most importantly, the more schuyot and schar you will have in this world. Which means the reason why you don't have the things that you want in this world is simply because you are lacking in Yirat Shemayim. You're lacking in it. Yirat Shemayim is attached to bitachon. If you actually believe that there's a God and there's consequences to your actions, would you say those same things that you said last night to your mother and father? How would you behave? How would you think about the challenges that you have? How would you think about all the gifts that you have? Would you be focusing on them differently if you actually believe there's a God? Do you really have Yirat Shemayim? Because if you're a fire sign, you have Yirat Shemayim, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble. The pasuk in Mishlech, Shlomo Melech says, "Ekev anava yirat Hashem, o shevakavod v'chaim." The effect of humility is awe of God, and with that comes what? Wealth, honor, and life. If Hezbollah and Hamas would actually have some Yirat Shemayim, they wouldn't do the things they do. They don't really believe in God. How could you believe in God knowing that you sent 10,000 rockets indiscriminately into another country? There's no Yirat Shemayim. Do you think there's not going to be any repercussions for that? There's going to be. You know what happens? Your beepers blow up. It's so funny. We all think that it was like the Israeli army that did this. We have no idea what actually happened. It's very possible this is like the 11th plague. That one day God says, I'm just going to blow up all the people. We have no idea what happened. We don't really know. We have no idea what happened. This could be an open miracle that's concealed, that you don't really know. I don't know what happened. could be the Israeli army, it could be Boreal. I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to just wipe these people off the map right now. It's going to make it look like the Israelis, will make them feel good, whatever. It's psychological warfare. The same thing that happened in Mitzrayim, where the Egyptians were terrified about, Makat Choshech and so on and so forth, all the other Makot. Right? Was it Moshe doing it? Was God doing it? Is God doing it? It's always God doing it. How did they pull it off? How did they get away with it for so long? These devices were tracking their movements, recording every single word. They knew their position. They knew where they were hiding things. They had a treasure trove. They just gave up at some point. Okay, there's too much information here. Let's just push the button. Red button, boom. We're done already. We don't need to collect any more information. That's where they're at right now. Why do you think yesterday they went to Syria? They know that Hezbollah, that they set up their trenches for a war of Israel fighting against them from the south to the north. Israel says, we're not fighting south to north, we're going to go from east to west. We're going to go into Syria, and we're going to start shooting from there. All that is, my friends, Yad Hashem. Doesn't make any sense. Israel always punches harder than it possibly can. And it's because something else is guiding it. If we had Yirat Shamayim, if we actually had this awe of heaven, your lives would be very different. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in Sefer Hamidot says, humility is the correction of the trait of arrogance, and it is rooted in the element of, that's right, fire. Fearlessness is the element of fire being used properly. He says that in this chapter of Sefer Hamidot, leaders inspire, empower, and communicate with those who are leading. Therefore, if you're someone who is at the forefront of being the best version of yourself, you're a leader. The only true leader can be someone who has Yirat Shamayim. And this is my issue with one of the guys who's running for president right now. Right? He lacks Yirat Shamayim, and he thinks it's all about him. And if he actually was able to find a modicum of Yirat Shamayim, especially after the 2 attempts on his life, everyone would see him so differently. If he walked down the stage at that debate and just simply said, my name is, and I'm sorry for my form of speech. I'm a poor communicator. I'm just very passionate about what I do. I love this country, tremendously, and it's often misunderstood. I'm so sorry. I'll try better. If he just said those words and nothing else, he would win. This whole election would be over already. That's all he had to say. But he has so much ego. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised, but he's for sure like classical fire sign, by the way. He's has red hair. If he was able to work on Yirat Shamayim, okay, he wouldn't have these problems. He would be an amazing leader, right? He would have everything there. But he's lacking in his Yirat Shamayim, so he can't inspire people. Leaders that have Yirat Shamayim inspire the leaders around them.
Oh, he's a Cancer.
Oh, Gemini. He's two-faced. All right, makes sense. Tiferet Maharal. Look what he says. He says fire. He says fire represents spiritual ascent, passion, willpower, the desire to rise higher. It is also associated, but by the way, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have fire. It just means that his predisposition isn't fire. He for sure is struggling with fire, right? Even if your birthday isn't the fire sign, that's not your element. Everyone has that. When you're struggling with your ego and your passion, it's because you're allowing the fire element inside of you to run wild, and therefore you need to be someone who pulls in. Wrangles in, thank you, that particular midah. So fire represents spiritual ascent, passion, willpower, and the desire to rise higher. It also is associated with the leadership and motivation. Fire seeks to rise, just as a person spiritual will. Does that make sense? Yeah? Spiritual will drives them to elevate themselves beyond the physical world. However, fire can also be destructive if not properly controlled, symbolizing arrogance or uncontrolled passion. It needs to be balanced by other elements to prevent this negative outcome. Now, it's interesting that one of the greatest accolades you could get in the Tanakh is being called a what? Ish. Where do you see it? All right, what was Mordechai's title? Ish Yehudi. Right? And the Chachamim say Ish is the greatest accolade you can be called. There's 5 different words for man in the Torah. You know what they are? What? Adam. What? Gever. Very good. Oh, excellent. Ben Adam. Enosh. And Ish are the 5 different lashonot for different men. And the Vilna Gaon says that each one of those names represents a man at a different level. And Adam is the lowest level. Enosh is in the middle. Ben Adam and Ish are the number 4 and 5. Okay? So why is Ish the greatest accolade you can get? Now, it's not an accident that Ish is related to the same 2 letters as Esh, right? Aleph, Shin, the Yud in the middle, always representative of God. The Yud, by the way, is the letter for the month of Elul. Excellent. Okay? And the Yud represents the letter of all formation. Every single Hebrew letter starts with a little Yud on top. And therefore, the month of Elul is about forming yourselves. Okay? The Ish represents the beginning point. That's that point of infinite greatness that God has in this world that He's trying to bring into the world. That is caused by us. How we choose to take the Yud and finish that letter, we define what that is. Okay? So you have the Yud is God. Esh. Okay? How does fire exist in this world?
Spark.
It starts with a spark. But fire could only exist through the process of consumption. It could only exist by consuming something else. If fire is not consuming something else, it can't exist. Right? Did you ever do the candle, the saucer, and the water experiment? Okay, if you want to do this with your little siblings or nephews and nieces, this is the coolest thing you do. You get like a saucer, okay? Fill it up with water. Put a candle that's higher than the water. Okay, light it, and then put a cup on top of the saucer. What happens? The candle, okay, the cup is over the candle and it's in the saucer and the water. Okay, so you have a saucer with water, candle in the middle, now you have the cup on top. What ends up happening is that the candle is going to burn out all the oxygen in the cup. It's going to run out of oxygen. And when there's no more oxygen, there's fire in there, what happens? It creates a vacuum. And all of the water outside of the saucer gets drawn into the cup until there's no more energy left in the fire, and then the fire is extinguished. It's actually how vacuums work, okay? But the nature of fire is that it can only exist through consumption. And if there's nothing there to consume, even oxygen, it ceases to exist. Now, is being a consumer a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends.
Always consuming and only consuming?
Depends what you're consuming.
Why are you here? Are you here to consume or are you here to create?
Both, but like I need to consume Torah
I
in
need
order
to consume in order to
create.
create. So fire, when it consumes, what else does it give you in return? Warmth, light, power, heat, all those things. So fire is one of those elements that as it takes, it's always giving. There's no way you can exist in this world without taking. But if your whole entire life is just about being a human that takes and takes and takes and takes and takes, you're not becoming an ish. You're not becoming a fire. Because to be a fire means that you take to give. And that's the lesson of fire. Fire can make you great, right? It can help you find that ultimate level of expression, of using that passion to go out and do things. But if you get it wrong, it'll burn you. Overly arrogant, overly confident, you make all those mistakes, it comes back to haunt you. You cannot take for the sake of taking. As Jews, we take for the sake of giving. Everything that you do is laman for something else. I'm doing this, I bought myself a house so I could have guests. I bought myself a house so I could do mitzvot, shiurim. I bought myself a car so I could give people rides. I could do mitzvot. Everything that I do is not that I could just take from that so I could give back to. I want to give back to everything that I do. Everything that I have is a vehicle that I can use to make the world around me, my friends, my community, my family, a little bit better. And that mindset, you're no longer just becoming a taker for the sake of taking, you're becoming someone who's a giver. And when you become a giver like that, what do you become? Godly. You become God-like. If all you do is take all day, okay, you're the antithesis of godliness. And then you become like an animal, because animals, all they know how to do is take. Animal isn't giving anybody. It's only taking for himself. Last year, we were in Africa, in South Africa, and we got to see the wild dogs. Remember the wild dogs? And the wild dogs are the ugliest creatures you'll see in South Africa. Okay? They're an endangered species. Okay? They are, there's only like 120 of them left in Kruger National Park. Okay? Now, why are they an endangered species? They are the most successful hunters in the land of South Africa. Pack of dogs, these dogs, wild dogs, are the most vicious, successful hunters in all of South Africa. So why are they endangered species? Now, they're also one of the few animals on the planet that will kill their prey while they're still alive and eat it. Every other animal, like the lion, will first try to kill its prey and then eat it. It's a better meal that way. It doesn't twitch, doesn't kill you in the face, it's just... But the wild dogs are so selfish, they're so always thinking about just taking, that they will kill the animal. Before they even kill the animal, they'll just rip its leg off and start eating it. And more than that, if they walk into like a farm and they'll just kill animals even if they're not hungry for the sake of killing. So they're often targeted. And I suspect the reason why they're being obliterated is because every single dog in that pack is only there for themselves. With lions, you have a pack of lions. Each lion is hunting for their pride. They're hunting for their chevra, for their group. They're not only there to take for themselves, they're there to share. When you create a society or individuals that are only here to take for themselves, that society has no future. This is why we call the Yam HaMelech the Dead Sea. Why is it called the Dead Sea? It's the lowest point on the planet. It has no ability of giving water anywhere else. Every other body of water on the planet gives water to some other body of water except for the Dead Sea. Something that only takes is called dead. This is why a poor person is considered to be dead. A blind person, dead. Deaf person, dead. Why? Because they're not in a position where they could give. Okay, sometimes they are, obviously. But from this perspective, when you're always in a taking state, you're not considered to be alive. To be alive means having the power of giving back. Rashi says over here as follows. He says, Vaya beitahu. Right? Why is this section placed here and that's interrupting the section dealing with the history of Yosef? To teach you that his brothers degraded him from this high position. We're talking about Yehuda over here. That Yehuda, when he sold Yosef, who was the guy that was pushing so hard to get rid of Yosef? It was Yehuda. And after the whole entire Ma'aseh of Yehuda, what happens? His ego, Yehuda's ego, got in the way. And what happens? That act of pushing and pride ends up destroying his position. He's demoted. But Yarad Yehuda, and he goes down. Not just because he's traveling down to Shechem, because he actually was traveling down. He was going down in Yerida. Genesis says, "V'tahar or b'teled ben v'tomar hapam odet Hashem al ken karat shemo Yehuda." Why is he called Yehuda? Because he is someone who has this ability of having gratitude, and gratitude is a precursor to humility, right? It's that humility of saying, you know what, I owe you one. Thank you so much. So he was lacking in it. His essence was to be someone who has this ability of being grounded. He didn't work on himself. He ends up losing his status and selling Yosef. The reason why we have so many of the tsar today in the world around us today is because of the sale of Yosef. Till this day, we're still suffering from that sale. And it's because of Yehuda's arrogance. He fixes it. Okay, so we know the 7 habits of highly effective people, and we're going to try to finish this up very quickly. I know it's very late, but let's just fly through this. He says over here like this. He says, praise and thanks. Great leaders, parents, and bosses look for opportunities to praise and comment others. Frequent praise build up others. Criticism can destroy relationships, and the humble leader empowers others rather than pointing out shortcomings directly. The way I like to think of it is like this. You all have bosses. There's 2 kinds of bosses. The bosses that zap versus the bosses that sap. Sappy bosses are the ones that are always complaining, pointing out your faults, what you could do, you should have done it like this, but the ones that zap, the ones that inspire you, are the ones always pointing out everything that you do right. They're building you up. Stop being a sapper. And by the way, if you have a boss that's a sapper, get a new job, get a new boss, you're never going to be happy there. You can never survive or succeed in an environment where the person that you're working for is sapping you. It ends up destroying you and you end up becoming bitter. Okay, vulnerability. Great leaders admit when they are wrong. Vulnerability is a sign of courage and creates a culture of growth where everyone feels empowered to learn and innovate. Hear that, Jessica? Anyway, so I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Anyway, I know. Anyway, so you have a vulnerability, right? Meaning Yehuda, okay, at some point with Tamar, when he ends up realizing that he was the one that got her pregnant and he could have easily have gotten her killed, he says, no, it was me. I did this to her. I take responsibility. And that's when his status changed already as one of the brothers. Okay, empathetic listening. Humble leaders listen with empathy, allowing them to connect with emotions of others. Arrogant leaders often, we know this, we've seen this on TV, often interrupt, assuming they know best. But humble leaders understand the importance of fully hearing someone before offering advice. Rashi says, Yehuda ata yeducha achicha. This is Yaakov giving him a little bit of rebuke. Why is he rebuked? Because he rebuked the first three tribes in harsh terms. Yehuda began to move away, that Yaakov should not censure him from that incident of Tamar. Yaakov therefore recalled with him with words that would soothe him. You see how even Yaakov recognizes the leader that you can't go ahead and just give your son musar. Sometimes you got to take a softer approach to build the person up. And that's what he does with Yehuda. Mishnah Perkei Avot says, Hu haya omer en bor yirat chet. A brute is not a sin-fearing person. V'lo am haaretz chasid. V'lo baishan lomed. V'lo akpadan melamed. V'lo kol marbeh b'schora maskim. U'makom she'en anashim. Yishtadel liyot ish. You see that idea of there being a man again. An impatient person can't teach. Someone who engages in too much business, can't become wise. And in a place where there is no men, strive to be a man. This is the idea of being a giver, and when you do that, you're able to accomplish what the people end up doing. So again, you see how arrogance and a lack of piousness or an ignorance takes a person away from his ability of accomplishing his mission, of impacting the world around them, but rather a person who is humble, and he recognizes that even though he doesn't have the abilities to go ahead and be successful, if he just pushes himself beyond the situation he finds himself in, he will be matzliach because he is doing for the cloud. Tehillim, Tavat Anavim Shamat Hashem Tachin Libam Takshiv Aznecha. Oh God, desire of the humble, you guide their ear, their heart, you cause your ear to listen. And then he says it again. Yochlu Anavim V'Yispo Hal Yalu Hashem V'Darshav Yechili V'Ma'ad. The humble shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek Him should be praised of Hashem. May your heart live forever. And lastly, Zivchei Elokim, Ruach Nishpara, Lev Nishpara, Nivchei Elokim, V'lo Tivazeh. The sacrifices of God are broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. Oh God, you will not despise. Hashem loves people that humble themselves, the people that are lowly, the people that are suffering, the people that are broken, the people that are going through hardships. He loves those people more than anyone because they have the greatest ability of being empathetic, of being sympathetic, of being able to give back to others. Reshit Rabbi, and we'll end with this last quote over here, says David's roots are connected to the city of Sodom. How are they connected? The archetype of the fiery corruption. His ancestor Lot survived the destruction of Sodom, and David's grandmother Ruth was a Moabite princess, descended from Lot. The sages remark, I, God, found David, my servant, in Sodom. Even David HaMelech himself is connected to this idea of Sodom. We know he was a ginger, he was a redhead, he had a fiery personality, and he was like Esav in the same way over there, both filled with arrogance, but he was not. Now, Esav, we know, comes from the word asui. He was complete. Everything that he needed, he had. He was born with all his teeth ready. He was born with perfectly slicked back hair, beautiful blue eyes. He was a speaker. He was handsome. He was intelligent. He was a powerful leader. He had everything there, and because of that, he was pompous and arrogant. No yirat shamayim. And it led to his destruction. David HaMelech is born believing that he is a bastard child, that he was born from infidelity, right? His brothers cast him out. He's a shepherd, he smells like goats. Okay, when Shmuel Hanavi comes to see him, he says, Yishai, he's like, this is going to be the king of the Jewish people? This little pipsqueak? This is going to be the guy that's going to save the people? His whole life was one of suffering and challenge, and yet it's exactly the suffering and challenge that allowed him to hold back his ego. He had a beautiful voice. He was a brilliant strategist. He was a military leader. He was powerful. He was strong. He was intelligent, but yet his circumstances forced him to have the humility that he needed to become the man that he was. Fire has the power of lifting rockets out of our planet. And it has the power of literally eviscerating everything on this planet. It has the energy to allow us to explore new vistas, and has the same exact power of destroying the people that are closest to us. If we learn how to harness that energy, if we learn how to use that particular power, we find that balance in it, we have the ability together of making this world an amazing place. Bezrat Hashem, we see that world becoming our reality soon. Have an amazing week, everybody. Bezrat Hashem, we will not see you next week, because next week, what? Not in this format. Next week we're going to get in the zone. We're going to have our classes for Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so I'm not going to be doing this series next week. I have one more class I have to finish up the series. Bezrat Hashem, next week is going to be the Get in the Zone for Rosh Hashanah. The week after that will be the Get in the Zone for Yom Kippur and October 7th, Bezrat Hashem, and for Yom Kippur. If we're looking forward to sharing more with you, Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow there will be a flyer and a link with a description for how you can find out more information about our trip to Costa Rica. That is 1 week long. Have a great night, everybody. Shabbat Tov.